Hello, welcome back to Up the Villa. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Tom Williams, French football expert. How you doing, mate?
Very well, thanks, Luke. How are you?
Yeah, really good, thank you. It's great to have you on, and your insight will be really good for the Villa fans as we look ahead to our sort of penultimate game against Monaco in the Champions League. So just talk to me a little bit about the history of Monaco, like who are they and what have they won, or big players that have played for them?
Yeah, I mean, Monaco are one of the grandest clubs in the history of French football, despite the peculiarity of not technically being a French club, because they, of course, represent the Principality of Monaco. So, strictly speaking, not actually a French club, but yeah, I mean, they've been part of the scenery since pretty much forever. Multiple league titles. I mean, Monaco, the place itself is renowned as a very nice place to live, a very expensive place to live. You've got the casino, you've got the beachside bars, you've got all the luxurious apartments, and there's always been a certain kind of glamour that comes with Monaco, a team that's always been kind of renowned for attacking football. Really, they've had some great forwards down the years. You know, you look at players like George Weah, Thierry Henry, who came through at Monaco, David Trezeguet, who was there as well. More recently, Kylian Mbappe, Radamel Falcao, who won the league together in 2016, 2017, reached the Champions League semi-finals that season as well. And then in more recent times, they've been more renowned for bringing through young players. I mean, they've always had a pretty good record when it comes to youth development, Monaco, but that's been a real focus over the last sort of 10 years or so. And I think if you look at this current Monaco squad, it is quite a youthful team. And with that comes all the kind of excitement that you get from watching a young team and watching young players breaking through at the highest level. You know, there's a big long list of really exciting talents in that Monaco squad. But at the same time, with that youthful exuberance comes occasional mistakes, comes occasional, inconsistencies. And I think that probably reflects pretty well where Monaco are currently.
Yeah, so what's sort of like their fan base like? My brother lives in Nice, so it's not far from Monaco, and I've been to Monaco. I'm a big F1 fan, so I've sort of like walked around where the track is, etc. So, sort of how well supported is it? Like, who watches them? Because if you just generally think of Monaco, you're thinking, like you say, the casino and sort of like all that razzmatazz of the yachts, etc. But you know, in England, sort of like our Premier League away days, it must be mad having like an away day at Monaco.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, really. You sort of ask, who Monaco's fans are, and sometimes it's quite difficult to answer that question because, they play at a very small stadium, the Stade Louis II. I mean, a spectacular stadium, very historic, very recognisable. Those distinctive columns behind one of the goals. A stadium that has staged various showpiece UEFA matches down the years. Was the venue for the European Super Cup for a little while. Very often it's practically empty. I mean, even when it's full, it doesn't make a huge amount of noise because it's such a small arena. But very often, you see an awful lot of empty seats, and that is one of the real peculiarities of Monaco as a football club. It's a wonderful place to live. It's a wonderful place to earn a living. Monaco are a great club. You've got the association with the Monaco royal family. There's a sort of glamour there. There's a prestige there. They've got this, extremely stylish kit. They've got this history of great attacking football and producing all these really exciting players. But when you watch their home matches, at least, they're generally playing in a very small, quite echoey, quite empty stadium. And it's, I know from having spoken to Monaco players over the years, it's one of the challenges is how do you motivate yourself in this kind of vacuum? Because, you look at other, similarly historic Ligue 1 clubs, Marseille, Saint-Etienne, PSG, they've generally always had a fairly raucous, fairly committed fan base. And, the Stade Louis II is occasionally full, but very often it's not. And on the one hand, that means that, the players don't feel like they've got the supporters breathing down their necks all the time and putting them under pressure. But it also means that, that kind of extra lift that players can get from their home fans, and Villa fans who go to Villa Park know all about that. Monaco just can't rely on that. So there's a kind of a challenge of motivation at Monaco. There's so many things to enjoy about playing football there, but you just have to make sure that you and your teammates are going to be super focused, because you can't rely on really getting anything from the supporters, unfortunately.
And how are they doing this season? Are they doing pretty well? Are they sort of trying to sort of like win titles, or is it more Champions League and trying to go about it that way?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a mixed season. I mean, Monaco have traditionally, been one of the leading clubs in Ligue 1. That they won the league title as recently as 2017. In recent years, they've been sort of pursuing this policy of signing up and coming young players. It's been a kind of sort of Red Bull style philosophy, if you like, in that they're not part of the Red Bull sporting empire, but Paul Mitchell, who's currently sporting director at Newcastle United, he came in at Monaco in 2020 and kind of set them on this sort of Red Bull style footing. We're going to play really aggressive front foot football, lots of young players who, we're going to blood, who we're going to give them, give opportunities to, who we will then sell at a profit. And that's basically, where Monaco have been the last few years. It has been a little bit up and down, but last season was pretty positive, and this season generally has been pretty positive as well. So Adi Hutter, the Austrian coach, has been in charge since 2023, I think. Similar kind of principles to what Monaco have been trying to do in recent years. Very dynamic, high octane football. They started the season really well domestically. I think they were unbeaten in their first 8, 6 wins, 2 draws, and people were, sort of wondering whether a title challenge might be taking shape. There's this huge impatience in France to see PSG properly challenged. Monaco started the season well, Marseille started the season well, and people started to rub their hands together. Monaco then kind of fell away a little bit. I mean, the only defeat, they've lost 4 games in the league so far this season. The only kind of really avoidable one was at home to Angers, who were one of the kind of bottom feeders, if you like. Apart from that, they lost at Nice, they lost at Marseille, they lost at home to PSG recently, who are the kind of teams you might expect them to lose to. They've only won 1 of the last 5 in the league, so they are kind of going through a bit of a slump at the moment. But in the Champions League, they've been really impressive. Started out by beating Barcelona at home. And okay, Barcelona had a man sent off. Eric Garcia got sent off early on, but Monaco were brilliant, deserved victors. Came back from 2-0 down to draw away to Dinamo Zagreb, beat Red Star Belgrade, beat Bologna, lost avoidably at home to Benfica, having been 2-1 up and letting a couple of late goals. And then the only game where they've really been outclassed was their last outing in the Champions League when they lost 3-0 at Arsenal. And that was the game where we really saw the limitations of this Monaco team. Lots of mistakes, gifting possession to Arsenal in dangerous areas. And that's ultimately what cost them. But they've already got 10 points on the board in the Champions League, which should be enough to get them into the playoff round at least. 2 kind of fiddly fixtures to finish with, obviously with the visit of Villa and then a trip to Inter Milan. But I think having that 10 points on the board means that they can kind of go into these games, in a relatively relaxed frame of mind. And I think having lost each of their last 2 matches in the Champions League, they'll be keen to sort of rediscover the dynamic they had earlier in the season when they beat Barcelona, when they thrashed Red Star Belgrade, and, show that they can potentially be a force when it comes to the knockout phase.
Yeah, so they are doing really well in the Champions League. So my next sort of question is, what can Villa expect playing Monaco in their stadium? And sort of, are you a fan of the new format? Because a lot's been spoke about the format. I personally really like it. I think it's fun, and it's giving teams like Villa a decent opportunity, because we were in pot 4, so we're technically classed as like the worst grouping of teams in it, but we were able to currently be in the top 8. So, we're not having to sort of go home and away against Bayern Munich. We can just play them once and be done with them. So what are you making of this new format?
Yeah, I've been pleasantly surprised by it. I was quite skeptical. I think one of the difficulties with the new format initially was that you knew it had been forced through by the big clubs. They've used this threat of the Super League for so long, and that UEFA ended up turning around and saying, "Okay, well, look, please don't go away and form your own Super League. We'll give you a kind of Super League in the Champions League if you like," and that kind of sticks in your throat a little bit. But like you say, it's been really beneficial for the kind of clubs that we might not have expected, to do that well. Clubs like Villa, Monaco, some of the other French sides, Lille, Brest, who are all, really well placed. So actually, I've been pleasantly surprised by it, and I think the fact that you've got this, this sense of jeopardy at this stage of the competition. You look at big clubs like PSG, like Manchester City, like Real Madrid, who've really kind of struggled, and at the opposite end of the table, these smaller clubs who've pulled off really impressive results. There have been shocks. There have been some upsets. There have been some great matches. There's a jeopardy there. So yeah, I've been impressed by the new format. In terms of what Villa can expect from Monaco, they tend to start games quite slowly and finish them really quickly. We saw that again at the weekend. They were away at Nantes on Friday night, went 2-0 down, came back to draw 2-2. And that's a bit of a theme with them. I mean, their record in the second half of games is one of the best in Europe. So they tend to grow into their matches. They've got some really, really talented footballers. I mean, the two kind of figureheads of the current Monaco project, if you like, are the two wide players, Magnus Akliouche, a left-footed winger who plays on the right, and Elias Ben-Seguir, who's a right-footed winger who plays on the left. Two young players, super talented, really elegant, with the ball. Akliouche in particular, they've been kind of the star turns for Monaco this season, and particularly because, for all that I said that Monaco have got these great attacking traditions earlier on, they've really struggled for goals this season. Brélin Bolo, Swiss international, has had injury problems in recent years, and he has struggled for goals this season. Following Balogun, the former Arsenal striker, he's had injury problems as well. Was just running into a bit of form earlier in the season, and then I think he dislocated his shoulder and has been out for a little while. They've got a young guy, George Elenikeina, Nigeria-born, 18-year-old striker. He scored the winner against Barcelona in that first Champions League league game. But he's still a kid. He's still kind of learning the ropes. So they've been quite dependent on Akliouche and Ben-Seguir, and that's where the danger will come from for Villa. You've also got players like Alexander Golovin, Takumi Minamino, the Japanese international who was formerly at Liverpool, and then a really dynamic midfield pairing of Lamine Camara and Denis Zakaria, the Swiss international, who's the Monaco captain. Obviously, Villa are extremely solid in that part of the pitch themselves, but I think that'll be a big challenge. I think whoever comes out on top in that battle in midfield is probably going to end up being, the team that comes away with the result that they wanted.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that they start slow. We've been starting very slow as well. So it's probably got 0-0 written all over it in the first half, and then a mad second half. So that's going to be interesting. So what have you made of Villa this season? Have you been able to watch much of us?
Yeah, I watched Villa quite a lot, to be honest. And yeah, I must admit, I've enjoyed watching Villa quite a lot. I mean, obviously, you had that mini slump, kind of late October going into November that has, kind of taken away a bit of momentum. But I think, Villa have shown on their day that they're capable of beating, practically anyone. And I think Villa are one of those teams who you feel that, when things click for them, they can be really, really dangerous. And, we saw that with that famous win against Bayern Munich already in the Champions League. And yeah, I think that midfield, I'm trying to think which game it was recently, where maybe it was at the home game against Villa, and you looked at that midfield with, Onana and Tielemans and McGinn and Rodgers, and it's just a terrifying collection of sort of, individuals. You talk about the kind of work rate, like physical power, footballing ability. Morgan Rogers has become one of the most exciting players in English football, since the start of this season, given that, we hadn't seen a huge amount prior to this season. Every time I watch him play, he impresses me, he surprises me. Obviously, they've got the Watkins Duran, sort of rivalry slash kind of strike partnership up front. So yeah, no, there's been a lot to enjoy about watching Villa this season, and I think it's been one of the most kind of enjoyable things about the Champions League, that you've got these historic clubs who don't have recent European pedigree, but who do have a European pedigree that are kind of back there, kind of having these famous nights and kind of reasserting themselves on the bigger stage. And obviously, everyone knows about Villa's history in the European Cup, and it's been kind of great to see Villa Park kind of full and really raucous for those home games in particular. And I think the fact that the team is so well placed in the Champions League as well suggests that they might be able to go on and do something in the competition this season.
Yeah, I mean, we've never finished outside of the quarterfinals being in this format of the competition. So, hopefully we can get there again. It is sort of like a big last two games for Villa. Monaco away, we've got Celtic at home. We're sitting on 13 points. So I think if we can go unbeaten in our next two, then we should get that sort of top 8. So, you know a lot about Villa and a lot about Monaco. So how do you sort of see the game going then? Like, what would be your prediction for this game?
It's a very difficult one to call, in that I think there are similarities between both teams, in the sense that you've got quite a lot of young players on both sides, particularly Monaco. Huge work ethic, really kind of solid, hard-working midfields, and both clubs who were kind of going into this Champions League without perhaps an enormous sense of expectation, but a lot of optimism and a lot of curiosity. And I think both Villa and Monaco have learned a lot about themselves in the Champions League this season, and it's one of those where each positive result kind of just breeds additional confidence. And I think the fact that they're both so well placed in the Champions League standings mean that this is kind of a free hit. Obviously Villa will want to finish in the top 8, given that that's where they are currently. But I think both clubs would have taken the points tallies that they've already got prior to the start of the league phase. So in a way, it's kind of a bit of a free hit. So I'm hoping it's going to be a really open game. I'm going to sit on the fence and predict a high scoring score draw. But yeah, you've got wonderful footballers on both sides. There's not a huge amount of pressure. So yeah, hopefully it'll be a really enjoyable occasion.
Yeah, I hope so. I kind of agree. I think 2-2's in my head, and then I feel like if Villa beat Celtic, then top 8 should be secure. But it's been great chatting to you. Your knowledge on Monaco is phenomenal, and Villa as well, I must say. So cheers for coming on. What I'll do is I'll link your socials in the description and on social media as well, so Villa fans can go and check out Tom's socials as well. So cheers for coming on, mate.
My pleasure. Thanks very much, Luke. All the best.